It was a rainy Tuesday evening when my world began to tilt on its axis. The sound of raindrops tapping against the window was a soothing backdrop to the mundane routine of our lives. I had just returned home from work, the familiar scent of my wife's lavender candles filling the air, a scent that had always brought me comfort. But that evening, as I stepped into our living room, I sensed something was off. The atmosphere felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that hung between us like a thick fog. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. I nodded, my heart racing as I took a seat on the couch, the cushions sinking beneath me as if they too were burdened by the weight of her words. I watched her pace, her fingers nervously twisting a strand of hair, a habit she had when she was anxious. "I've been feeling unhappy," she finally confessed, her eyes downcast, avoiding my gaze. Those words struck me like a physical blow. Unhappy? How could she be unhappy? We had built a life together, filled with dreams and laughter. I felt a rush of confusion, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I was paralyzed by the fear of what her unhappiness might mean. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling slightly. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the way she fought against the words that seemed to claw their way out of her throat. "Is it something I did? Something I can fix?" She shook her head, her expression pained. "It's not just you. It's everything. I feel lost." Lost. The word echoed in my mind, reverberating through the walls of our home. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, attentive and loving. How could I have missed this? How could I have let her feel so alone? As she spoke, I felt the ground beneath me shift. I thought back to the moments we had shared, the laughter over dinner, the quiet evenings spent wrapped in each other's arms, the dreams we had painted together. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the uncertainty that loomed over us. I tried to recall the last time we had truly connected, the last time I had seen her smile without a hint of sadness behind it. It felt like ages ago. I could see the flicker of something in her eyes, a glimmer of hope mixed with despair. I wanted to believe that we could work through this, that we could find our way back to each other. But as I looked at her, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I replayed our conversation over and over, searching for clues, for signs that I had missed. I thought about the late nights she had started to keep, the way she had become distant, lost in her thoughts. I had brushed it off as stress from work, but now I wondered if it was something more. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I felt a sense of dread settle in my chest. What if her unhappiness was rooted in something I couldn't fix? What if there was someone else? The thought sent a chill down my spine, and I pushed it away, refusing to entertain such a painful possibility. But as the days turned into weeks, that seed of doubt began to take root. I found myself watching her closely, searching for signs of infidelity. I noticed the way she smiled at her phone, the way she would quickly hide it when I entered the room. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I was caught in a web of confusion and fear, grappling with the reality that my wife, the woman I loved, was unhappy. And as I lay awake at night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of discovering something that would change everything. Would I be able to handle the truth if it came to light? Or would it shatter the fragile remnants of our marriage? As I stared into the darkness, I realized that I was standing at the edge of a precipice, and the only way forward was to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As I sat in the quiet of our home, the echoes of my wife's confession lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the uncertainty that now clouded our lives. I found myself drifting into memories, flashbacks that painted a vivid picture of our relationship, moments that had once filled my heart with joy but now felt like distant echoes of a happier time. I remembered our wedding day, a sun-drenched afternoon in late spring. The air was fragrant with blooming flowers, and the world felt alive with possibility. I had watched her walk down the aisle, her white dress flowing like a river of silk, her smile radiant and pure. In that moment, I had felt invincible, as if nothing could ever come between us. We exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other through thick and thin, and I believed every word. But as I recalled that day, I also remembered the challenges we had faced. The first year of marriage had been a whirlwind of adjustments, learning to navigate each other's quirks, the late-night arguments over trivial matters, and the moments of doubt that crept in like shadows. Yet, we had always managed to find our way back to each other, to reconnect over shared laughter and whispered secrets. There was the time we had taken a spontaneous road trip to the coast, just the two of us, with no destination in mind. We had driven for hours, singing along to our favorite songs, the wind whipping through our hair as we rolled down the windows. We had spent the night on the beach, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars twinkle above us. In that moment, everything felt perfect. But as I sifted through these memories, I couldn't ignore the cracks that had begun to form in our relationship. The late nights at work had become more frequent, and I had noticed her withdrawing, her laughter becoming less frequent. I had attributed it to the pressures of life, the demands of adulthood, but now I wondered if I had been blind to the signs. I recalled the last anniversary we had celebrated, a quiet dinner at our favorite restaurant. I had tried to make it special, but she had seemed distant, lost in thought. I had asked her what was wrong, but she had brushed it off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I had convinced myself that it was just a rough patch, that we would bounce back, but now I questioned whether I had ignored the warning signs for too long. As I sat in the dim light of our living room, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I had always believed that love could conquer all, that we could weather any storm together. But now, I was faced with the harsh reality that love alone might not be enough. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between us grew palpable. I found myself analyzing every interaction, every word spoken, searching for clues that might explain her unhappiness. I noticed the way she would flinch at my touch, the way her laughter felt forced. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the growing chasm between us, but I was terrified of what I might find on the other side. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I caught a glimpse of her phone lying on the table. It buzzed with a notification, and for a fleeting moment, I considered picking it up, my heart racing at the thought of uncovering the truth. But I hesitated, a wave of guilt washing over me. I didn't want to invade her privacy, to betray her trust. Yet, the fear of the unknown gnawed at me, a relentless whisper in the back of my mind. I decided to confront her, to ask her directly about her feelings. But every time I opened my mouth, the words caught in my throat. I was afraid of what she might say, afraid of the truth that could shatter the fragile remnants of our marriage. Instead, I buried myself in work, trying to distract myself from the turmoil brewing within. I threw myself into projects, spending long hours at the office, hoping that the busyness would drown out the nagging doubts. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the reality that loomed over us. One night, as I lay in bed, I felt a sense of desperation wash over me. I wanted to reach out to her, to hold her close and tell her that we could face anything together. But the distance between us felt insurmountable, a chasm that threatened to swallow us whole. I closed my eyes, trying to find solace in sleep, but the memories continued to swirl in my mind. I thought of the laughter we had shared, the dreams we had built, and the love that had once felt unbreakable. I longed to return to that place, to find a way to reconnect with the woman I had fallen in love with. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. The signs were there, lurking in the shadows, and I was left grappling with the fear that I might soon have to confront a truth I wasn't ready to face. As the weeks dragged on, the weight of uncertainty settled heavily on my chest. I found myself caught in a cycle of doubt and fear, each day blurring into the next. I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but inside, I was unraveling. The signs of my wife's unhappiness were becoming harder to ignore, and with each passing moment, I felt the gnawing suspicion that there was more to her discontent than she had revealed. It started with the little things. I noticed how she would often leave the room to take phone calls, her voice dropping to a whisper as she stepped outside. I tried to convince myself that it was work-related, but the way she would glance at her phone with a mix of excitement and anxiety made my stomach churn. I found myself replaying those moments in my mind, dissecting her expressions, searching for clues that might explain the shift in her demeanor. One evening, I returned home early from work, hoping to surprise her with dinner. As I entered the house, I was greeted by an unusual silence. The television was off, and the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. I called out her name, but there was no response. My heart raced as I made my way to our bedroom, half expecting to find her lost in thought or perhaps reading a book. Instead, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in hand, her expression a mix of surprise and guilt as I walked in. "Hey, I didn't expect you home so soon," she said, her voice lacking its usual warmth. I forced a smile, trying to mask the unease that had settled in my gut. "Thought I'd surprise you," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you up to?" "Just, nothing much," she said, her eyes darting away from mine. I could sense the tension in the air, the unspoken words hanging between us like a thick fog. I wanted to press her, to ask what was really going on, but the fear of what I might uncover held me back. Instead, I busied myself in the kitchen, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that had settled over me. I prepared dinner, the familiar motions grounding me as I fought against the rising tide of anxiety. But even as I stirred the pasta and chopped vegetables, my mind was racing, replaying the scene I had just witnessed. Later that night, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. The conversation felt forced, our laughter strained. I watched her pick at her food, her mind clearly elsewhere. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the growing chasm between us, but the words caught in my throat. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise, as if she had been pulled from a trance. "Yeah, of course," she replied, but the way she said it felt hollow, devoid of the sincerity I craved. I wanted to believe her, but the nagging doubt in my mind wouldn't let me. Days turned into weeks, and the signs of her emotional distance became more pronounced. I noticed her spending more time on her phone, her laughter becoming less frequent. The late nights at work continued, and I found myself questioning whether she was truly working late or if there was something, or someone, else occupying her time. One afternoon, I decided to take a chance. I had been invited to a colleague's gathering, and I thought it might be a good opportunity to invite her along, to reconnect in a social setting. I approached her with the invitation, hoping to spark some excitement. "Hey, there's a get-together at Mark's place this weekend. Want to come?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I don't know. I might have plans," she replied, her voice lacking enthusiasm. "Plans? What plans?" I pressed, my heart sinking at her response. I might need some time to myself," she said, her words cutting through me like a knife. Time to herself. The phrase echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of the distance that had grown between us. I felt a surge of frustration and helplessness. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand to know what was really going on. But instead, I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Okay, no problem. Just thought it might be fun," I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil I felt inside. As the weekend approached, I found myself spiraling deeper into a pit of despair. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, that the woman I had once known was slipping away from me. I spent hours replaying our memories, searching for the moment when everything had begun to unravel. Then, one fateful evening, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The cool night air felt refreshing against my skin, but the weight of my thoughts was suffocating. As I wandered through our neighborhood, I found myself passing by a small cafe we used to frequent. The memories flooded back, sipping coffee together, sharing pastries, and laughing until our sides hurt. But as I stood outside, I noticed something that made my heart drop. Through the window, I saw her, my wife, sitting at a table with another man. They were laughing, leaning in close, their body language intimate in a way that made my stomach churn. I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath me, leaving me suspended in a moment of disbelief. I stood frozen, my heart racing as I watched them. The man was handsome, with an easy smile that seemed to draw her in. I wanted to look away, to convince myself that I was imagining things, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the scene unfolding before me. In that moment, everything I had feared came crashing down around me. The signs I had ignored, the doubts I had pushed aside, they all coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. My wife was betraying me. I turned away, my heart pounding in my chest as I stumbled back home, the weight of betrayal settling heavily on my shoulders. I felt as if I were drowning, gasping for air in a sea of despair. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, was slipping through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it. The walk home felt like an eternity, each step heavy with the weight of my discovery. My mind raced, replaying the scene I had just witnessed. I could still see her smile, the way she leaned in toward that man, her laughter ringing in my ears like a cruel taunt. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak swirling within me, a tempest that threatened to consume me whole. As I entered our home, the familiar surroundings felt foreign, tainted by the knowledge of her infidelity. I stood in the living room, the silence echoing around me, and I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had to confront her. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I paced back and forth, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for her to return. The minutes felt like hours, each tick of the clock amplifying my anxiety. I thought about the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared, and the love that had once felt unbreakable. How could she betray me like this? How could she throw it all away? When she finally walked through the door, I felt a rush of emotions flood over me. She looked tired, her eyes slightly red, as if she had been crying. My heart twisted at the sight, but I quickly reminded myself of the truth I had uncovered. I couldn't let my feelings for her cloud my judgment any longer. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face, but she nodded, her expression shifting to one of apprehension. "Sure," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We moved to the living room, and I gestured for her to sit. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I saw you today," I began, my heart racing as I met her gaze. "At the cafe. With him." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged with emotion. I watched her face pale, her eyes widening in shock. "What?" I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but I could see the truth reflected in her eyes. The denial felt weak, a flimsy shield against the reality that had come crashing down around us. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I saw you laughing with him, leaning in close. How long has this been going on?" The anger bubbled to the surface, and I struggled to keep it in check. I didn't want to yell, didn't want to lose control, but the betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, tears began to spill down her cheeks, and I felt a pang of sorrow mixed with my anger. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but the truth loomed between us like a chasm. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I was going to tell you. I didn't know how." "Tell me what?" I pressed, my heart racing as I braced myself for the truth. "That you've been cheating on me? That you've been lying to my face while I've been here, trying to understand your unhappiness?" "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Didn't mean for it to go this far?" I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. "You're telling me that you just stumbled into an affair? That you didn't think about the consequences? About me?" "I was lonely," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were always working late, and I felt abandoned. I didn't know how to reach out to you. I thought I could handle it, but it spiraled out of control." Lonely. The word echoed in my mind, a painful reminder of the distance that had grown between us. I had been so focused on my work, on providing for us, that I had neglected the emotional connection we once shared. But that didn't excuse her betrayal. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Do I know him? She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. It's someone from work. We just connected. I didn't mean for it to happen. Connected? I spat, anger flaring within me. You think that's an excuse? You think that justifies what you've done? I know it doesn't, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, but I was lost. Love? The word felt hollow now, a cruel reminder of the trust that had been shattered. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the love we had shared, but the betrayal felt like a wound that would never heal. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. You've broken my trust, and I don't know how to move forward from this. I'll do anything to make it right, she pleaded, her eyes filled with desperation. I'll end it with him. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, and a flicker of hope. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hold on to the love we had built together. But another part of me screamed that I couldn't trust her again, that the damage had been done. I need time, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to think. As I turned away, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had betrayed me in the most profound way. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that everything had changed. The days that followed the confrontation felt like a blur, a haze of emotions that left me reeling. I moved through life like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling utterly disconnected from reality. The weight of betrayal hung over me like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over every moment. I found myself oscillating between anger, sadness, and a desperate longing for the love we once shared. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the pain she had caused. The laughter that had once filled our home was replaced by an uncomfortable silence, a chasm that seemed to grow wider with each passing day. I could see the guilt etched on her face, the way she would flinch at my touch, as if she were afraid of the consequences of her actions. I spent hours lost in thought, replaying our history in my mind. I thought about the moments that had defined our relationship, the laughter, the shared dreams, the promises we had made to each other. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the reality of her infidelity. I found myself questioning everything, the love we had built, the trust we had shared, and whether it was all just an illusion. One evening, I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the television, but I couldn't focus on anything. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more painful than the last. I thought about the man she had been with, the intimacy they had shared, and the way she had betrayed the vows we had taken. I felt a surge of anger rise within me, a desire for revenge that I struggled to suppress. But what would revenge accomplish? Would it heal the wounds she had inflicted? Would it bring back the love we had lost? I didn't know. All I knew was that I was hurting, and I needed to find a way to process the truth. I decided to reach out to a close friend, someone who had always been there for me. I needed to talk, to vent, to find some semblance of clarity in the chaos. We met at a local bar, the dim lighting and soft music providing a welcome distraction from the turmoil in my heart. As I sat across from him, I felt a mix of relief and vulnerability. I poured out my heart, recounting the events of the past few weeks, the discovery, the confrontation, and the emotional fallout. My friend listened intently, nodding as I spoke, his expression a mix of sympathy and understanding. I can't believe she would do that to you, he said, shaking his head. You deserve better, man. You've always been there for her. I thought I was, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. I thought we were happy. But now I feel like I don't even know her anymore. Have you thought about what you want to do? He asked, leaning forward. Do you want to try to work it out, or is it too far gone? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe that we can fix this, that we can rebuild what we had. But another part of me is terrified of being hurt again. How can I trust her after this? Trust is everything in a relationship, he said, his voice steady. If you can't trust her, then what's the point? You deserve to be with someone who values you and your commitment. His words resonated with me, and I felt a flicker of clarity amidst the chaos. I realized that I needed to prioritize my own well-being, to take the time to heal and reflect on what I truly wanted. As the night wore on, I found myself contemplating the future. I thought about the possibility of counseling, of seeking professional help to navigate the complexities of our situation. It was a daunting prospect, but I knew that if there was any chance of salvaging our marriage, we would need guidance. When I returned home, I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and hurt that still lingered. I talked to a friend tonight, I said, my voice steady. I'm considering counseling. Her eyes widened, a mix of hope and fear crossing her face. You are? I think that's a good idea. I want to do whatever it takes to make this right. I nodded, but the uncertainty still loomed over us. I need time to process everything. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. I understand, she said, her voice trembling. I'll give you space. Just know that I'm here, and I want to work on this. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. Perhaps counseling could provide the clarity we both needed, a way to navigate the pain and betrayal that had shattered our lives. But I also knew that healing would take time, and I had to be patient with myself. The next few days were a blur of emotions as I grappled with the reality of our situation. I found myself oscillating between moments of anger and moments of longing for the love we had once shared. I began to journal my thoughts, pouring my heart onto the pages as a way to process the whirlwind of feelings that consumed me. I wrote about the love we had built, the dreams we had shared, and the pain of betrayal that now overshadowed everything. I reflected on my own shortcomings, the ways I had contributed to her feelings of loneliness. But I also acknowledged that her actions were her own, and I couldn't shoulder the blame for her choices. As I continued to write, I felt a sense of release, a cathartic outlet for the emotions that had been bottled up inside me. I began to see the situation more clearly, recognizing that healing would require both of us to confront our issues head-on. I reached out to a therapist, scheduling an appointment for the following week. I knew that it would be a difficult journey, but I was determined to find a way forward, whether that meant rebuilding our marriage or ultimately letting go. The days turned into weeks, and as I sat in the therapist's office, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. The room was warm and inviting, filled with soft lighting and comfortable furniture. I had never been one to seek help, but I knew that navigating the emotional fallout of my wife's infidelity required more than I could handle alone. My therapist, a kind woman with a gentle demeanor, encouraged me to share my feelings. I spoke about the betrayal, the anger, and the heartbreak that had consumed me since the day I discovered my wife's affair. I recounted the moments of doubt, the signs I had ignored, and the painful confrontation that had shattered my world. It's important to acknowledge your feelings, she said, her voice soothing. You've experienced a profound loss, and it's natural to feel a range of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. Healing takes time. As I spoke, I felt a weight begin to lift. I realized that I had been holding on to so much pain, trying to process it all on my own. The therapist helped me see that it was okay to feel hurt, to grieve the loss of the relationship I had thought we had. We discussed the possibility of couples therapy, and I felt a flicker of hope at the thought of working through our issues together. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also recognized that if we were going to rebuild our marriage, we needed to confront the underlying problems that had led to her infidelity. When I returned home that evening, I found my wife sitting on the couch, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. I went to see a therapist today, I said, my voice steady. I think we should consider couples therapy. Her face lit up with a mixture of relief and hope. Really? I think that's a great idea. I want to work on this, to understand what went wrong. I nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over me. We need to be honest with each other, to confront the issues that led us here. It's going to be difficult, but I believe it's worth it. As we began to navigate the complexities of our relationship, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned throughout this painful journey. I realized that love is not just about the good times, it's also about facing the challenges together, about being vulnerable and open with one another. In therapy, we explored the roots of her unhappiness, the feelings of loneliness that had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. We discussed my own shortcomings, the ways I had become consumed by work and had neglected our emotional connection. It was a painful process, but it was also cathartic. Slowly, we began to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. We learned to communicate more openly, to express our needs and desires without fear of judgment. I found myself rediscovering the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had once brought so much joy into my life. But healing was not linear. There were days when the pain resurfaced, moments when I would catch a glimpse of her phone and feel a surge of anxiety. I had to remind myself that trust takes time to rebuild, that it was okay to feel vulnerable as we navigated this new chapter together. As the weeks turned into months, I began to see glimmers of hope. We started to reconnect in ways I hadn't thought possible. We went on dates, shared laughter, and found joy in the little moments that had once defined our relationship. I felt a renewed sense of love for her, tempered by the understanding that our journey was far from over. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to her, my heart full. "I know we have a long way to go, but I believe we can get through this together," I said, my voice steady. She smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love you, and I'm so grateful for your willingness to work on this. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I want to be better for you, for us." In that moment, I felt a sense of closure begin to wash over me. I realized that while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they didn't have to define our future. We had the power to create a new narrative, one built on honesty, vulnerability, and a commitment to growth. As we embraced, I felt a sense of peace settle within me. I knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship, learning and growing along the way. In the end, I understood that love is not just about the absence of pain, it's about the willingness to confront it, to learn from it, and to emerge stronger on the other side. I had discovered the depths of my own resilience, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held for us. This journey had changed me, but it had also brought us closer together. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided by betrayal, I was a man who had faced the truth and emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. And as I looked into my wife's eyes, I saw the promise of a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to love once more.